Sometimes the people who hurt us the most are the same people we struggle the hardest to let go of. Logically, it makes no sense. If someone causes pain, the natural reaction should be to walk away. But in reality, many people feel the opposite. They stay, they defend the person. They even feel emotionally attached to the very person who causes their suffering. And the strangest part is that the bond can feel incredibly strong, almost addictive. If you've ever wondered why this happens, you're not weak and you're not alone. Psychology has a name for this powerful and confusing dynamic. It's called trauma bonding. Today we're exploring one of the most complex emotional patterns in human behavior, the trauma bonding cycle, and why our brains sometimes become deeply attached to people who repeatedly hurt us. To understand trauma bonding, imagine a relationship that moves through emotional extremes. One moment there's warmth, affection, and attention. The next moment there's criticism, distance, or emotional pain. This cycle repeats again and again. At first, the relationship may feel exciting and intense. The positive moments feel incredibly powerful. When the person is kind, loving, or attentive, the emotional connection feels strong, but then something shifts. The same person suddenly becomes cold, dismissive, or hurtful. The confusion begins here. After the painful moment, something surprising happens. Instead of the relationship ending, the person who caused the hurt returns with kindness again. Maybe they apologize, show affection, or promise things will change. And when that warmth returns, it feels even more powerful than before. This emotional roller coaster creates a very specific psychological effect. The brain begins associating the person not only with pain, but also with relief from that pain. Over time, this creates a bond that becomes extremely difficult to break. One reason this happens involves the brain's reward system. Our brains are wired to respond strongly to unpredictable rewards. When positive experiences appear randomly rather than consistently, they become even more powerful. Think about slot machines in casinos. People keep pulling the lever not because they win every time, but because they win sometimes. That unpredictability makes the reward feel exciting and addictive. Trauma bonding follows a similar psychological pattern. The affection is inconsistent. Sometimes it appears, sometimes it disappears. This unpredictability keeps the brain emotionally engaged and constantly hoping the positive version of the person will return. Another important factor is emotional investment. When people spend time, energy, and emotional effort in a relationship, their brain naturally wants that investment to mean something. Leaving the relationship can feel like admitting that all that time and emotion was wasted. So instead, the mind tries to repair the bond. This is where hope becomes powerful. People in trauma bonds often focus on the potential of the relationship rather than the reality of it. They remember the good moments and believe that if they try harder, communicate better, or change something about themselves, the positive version of the person will stay. But the cycle usually repeats. Another reason trauma bonds form is emotional intensity. Relationships that involve dramatic emotional highs and lows can feel incredibly powerful. The intensity itself can create a sense of connection. Calm and stable relationships may even feel boring in comparison. But emotional intensity is not the same as emotional health. Healthy relationships are built on consistency, trust, and respect. Trauma bonds are built on instability and emotional confusion. There's also a psychological factor called intermittent reinforcement. This is when rewards appear unpredictably instead of regularly. In behavioral psychology, intermittent reinforcement is known to create the strongest behavioral patterns. Because the reward is uncertain, the brain keeps trying. In relationships, this means someone may keep hoping for the next moment of kindness or affection. And when it finally appears, the relief can feel overwhelming. Another hidden factor is identity. When someone becomes emotionally attached to a difficult relationship, they may begin to see themselves as the person responsible for fixing it. They become the helper, the supporter, the one who understands the other person when no one else does. This identity can make leaving feel like abandoning a mission. But there is something important to understand here. Trauma bonds are not built on genuine emotional safety. They are built on cycles of emotional dependency. The person experiencing the bond may begin to feel that their happiness depends on the other person as mood or behavior. This creates a powerful psychological loop. Pain creates anxiety. Kindness creates relief. Relief strengthens attachment, and the cycle continues. One of the most confusing parts of trauma bonding is that outsiders often see the problem clearly. Friends or family may ask, "Why don't you just leave?" But inside the relationship, things feel very different. The brain remembers the good moments. It remembers the promises. It remembers the emotional connection that appeared during the best times. Those memories can feel stronger than the painful ones. There is also fear. Fear of being alone, fear of losing the connection completely, and fear that leaving might be a mistake. All of these emotions combine to keep the bond alive. But here is an important truth many people discover later. The bond itself can feel powerful, but that does not mean it is healthy. Sometimes the strongest emotional attachments are actually built on the most unstable foundations. Recognizing a trauma bond is often the first step toward breaking the cycle. Awareness changes the way the brain processes the relationship. Instead of seeing random moments of kindness as proof that the relationship is improving, people begin to see the repeating pattern. The pattern becomes visible: pain followed by affection, conflict followed by apology, distance followed by emotional closeness. Once the pattern becomes clear, something interesting happens. The emotional intensity begins to lose some of its power. The brain starts understanding that the kindness is part of the cycle, not necessarily a permanent change. Another important step is rebuilding independence. Trauma bonds often weaken when someone reconnects with their own interests, friendships, and personal identity outside the relationship. The more stable emotional support someone has in their life, the less power the unstable relationship holds. Healing from trauma bonding also requires patience. Emotional attachments do not disappear instantly. The brain has been trained to associate the person with both pain and relief. Breaking that association takes time, but the good news is that the brain is incredibly adaptable. When people step away from the cycle and experience consistent, healthy connections, their emotional system begins to reset. Calm relationships begin to feel comfortable rather than boring. Trust begins to feel safe rather than unfamiliar. And slowly, the intensity of the old bond fades. Understanding trauma bonding can change the way we see relationships, not only in our own lives, but also in the stories we hear around us. It reminds us that human emotions are complex. People do not stay in painful situations simply because they want to suffer. Often, powerful psychological patterns are shaping their behavior in ways they don't fully understand. And once those patterns become visible, something powerful happens. People begin to reclaim their choices. They begin to recognize the difference between intensity and love, between attachment and respect, between emotional chaos and emotional safety. And that awareness can be the beginning of something much healthier. Because real love does not depend on cycles of pain and relief. Real connection is steady. It grows slowly. And most importantly, it allows people to feel safe rather than confused. If this topic made you reflect on your own experiences or relationships, you're not alone. Human psychology is full of hidden patterns that shape our emotions in ways we rarely notice. And here on Mind Patrons, we explore those patterns together, uncovering the psychology behind relationships, behavior, and the invisible forces that guide the human mind.